All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Resilience is Your Superpower. I'm your host, Mio Santana. As you know, I'm the owner and founder of Divine Journey, a transformational coaching program based here in Miami, Florida. And I'm so excited to be here today with our guest, our special guest, and to actually be here. We've been here all through the month of April and May doing these interviews, and I'm just so overwhelmed at the response we've gotten, at how many beautiful, amazing interviews we've had and what we have to come so far for the rest of the month. So keep in mind that we're still going to be here Wednesdays and Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern live. So keep coming back, keep checking out the interviews because we are talking to some amazing women. And I just wanted to give you guys some background as to why I started this program. And so recently, I have a self-love program that I do for women. It's an 8-week group coaching program that is phenomenal. It's groundbreaking. And we recently went through a rebranding of the program. So we were figuring out what to name the program. And I was like racking my brain about it. I couldn't figure out what to name the program. Self-love this, self-love that. But like, I didn't want it to just be named self-love. It needed to be something deeper, something more profound. And I started thinking back at my own transformational journey of over almost 20 years of my own journey. And I remembered doing all these like personality assessments and like identity things. And like, oftentimes they ask like 5 of the closest people around you, tell them to tell you your strengths and your traits and things like that. And one of the things that they always mentioned about me was that I was resilient. They saw that whatever I went through in life, I would always come out on top. I would always revamp myself, re-strategize, and I was resilient. And so that always stayed with me. And so as I was figuring out the name of the program, it occurred to me, I was like, oh, resilience. But then I thought to myself, I realized that I looked back at all the women that have taken the program, and I realized that they all carry the same trait. They are all resilient as well. And it just clicked. It was like, there it is. It's resilience. And so what I did was in honor of all the women that have taken the program, but also in honor of all the women out there who are currently being resilient and who are currently on their journeys and their challenges and obstacles. I went ahead and reached out to some of the most amazing women in the world, women that are making things happen, women that are making change in their life transformation, women who have gone through obstacles and turmoil to get to where they are. And they were so loving and obliged to come and talk with me and sit down and just have like these little fireside chats together and talk about their lives. So with that said, I'm super, super honored and excited to have Marisela Rosas with us today. So Marisela is a Latina single mom who is committed to wellness, kindness, and happiness. She's a higher education advocate of the underserved, and she lives to support and uplift women. And so I'm so happy to have you here, Marisela. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mia. Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Thank you for being here, for agreeing to be here. So we always like to give the audience a little bit of background about who you are, like in your own words, like what you're up to, who are you? Tell us about you.
Okay. So honestly, I've always, in my whole life, always felt a desire to help people that maybe are lost in life. So what I've been doing as my profession the last 28 years or so is I've been in college admissions. I was a first generation college student myself, so my parents weren't really able to help me out with that process. And then, so, after I successfully navigated through that, that's what attracted me to it, was being able to help others. So in my entire career, I have always worked with underserved students. So first generation college students, underrepresented students of color, disadvantaged students, economically disadvantaged students, and transfer students. And I felt like I've been able to really make the biggest difference that way. And my career has been very, very fulfilling that way. But recently, and actually my career has been a happy constant in my life. But in my personal life, the last 8 to 9 years, it's actually been a period of emotional trauma and loss. So I went through a lot of different things. Started out with a divorce, went through divorce. I was married for 18 years and I never imagined that I would get divorced. And 2 years after my divorce was just kind of getting used to that. And I lost my ex-husband, passed away, and that was devastating to myself and my daughter, who was only 9 years old at the time, and she was, you know, daddy's little girl. And that's a whole different thing, because I went from being a single mom to being an only parent, which is a distinction that I like to make, because as a single mom, I still had, you know, my ex-husband was there. We were sharing, you know, all the responsibilities, co-parenting and all of that. But all of a sudden I became the only parent. So now I have to be mother and father, and there's nobody else there, you know, to pick up the slack. You know, there's family members and stuff that can help, but in terms of being the parent, that's it. I'm it. So that was very difficult. And not too long after that, I actually lost my mommy. My mother. It was very unexpected. Actually, at the time, my dad had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he was undergoing treatment, and we were kind of bracing ourselves for what might be coming with him. And my mother was a lot younger than him, and she ended up having a heart attack and passing away. And, you know, like I said, unexpectedly. And then sadly, after that, my father's health took a nosedive, and, you know, I lost him like a year and a few months later. So it was just a time, you know, and even during that time, I lost 2 aunts. One that was very close to me, was almost like a second mother, an uncle, like a really large chunk of my tribe, you know, those people that you count on that are always in your corner, right? Mm-hmm. So so it was, you know, a really, really kind of difficult time in my life. And you know, but during those times, you know, I was able to kind of stay positive, and it was really kind of sink or swim. Like, I really didn't have too much time to think about, you know, what I'm doing. It's just like, you just gotta, like, you know, survive, right? And be a role model for my daughter and stay positive and all of that. You know, like I said, with all of that pain, there's also like some triumphs that come with that, you know, as you overcome some of these challenges and everything. And so I felt that during that time, my theme song was that David Guetta's Titanium, you know, like, you shoot me down, but, you know, I get up and I am titanium, and all of that, right? So so recently I kind of felt like this calling. I had like this narrative going on in my head of like, it was like really kind of like my voice giving advice to like other women of like, that might be going through some of the same things I've gone through, right? And kind of helping them out. And at the beginning of this year, and I have to say, I'm thankful, because this might not have happened as quickly if it hadn't been for the pandemic, because, you know, I've been working from home and there's less distractions. I usually have a long commute. I have a teenage daughter that you have to drive her to like all these different activities. So I actually been working from home. Everything's been virtual. So I've had a little bit more time for self-reflection. And I thought to myself at the beginning of this year, I have to do something different. Like I'm feeling like there's something additional I need to be doing in my life. You know, I've had this fulfilling career, but there's something more. And that's when, you know, one of our mutual friends comes in, Ilona Pamplona, who's a coach. And I went to her, and out of that came that I really should be doing a YouTube channel for women. And so about 3 weeks ago, I launched my YouTube channel called Chica Power, and it's for women, and it's all about, you know, wellness, wholeness, happiness, you know, and that's basically where I'm at right now.
Amazing. And for those of you who out there who don't know, Ilona Pamplona was also here for an interview for Resilience is Your Superpower. It was my first interview. So go back into the archive and check that out, because it was a phenomenal sit down with her. So props to Ilona. But wow, okay, so that's beautiful. So to give those viewers who are watching for the first time some context about resilience, because, you know, we hear this term, you know, bounced around a lot, and some of us might think, oh, I'm not resilient, and, you know, it just, there's a lot around it. So just to like clear it up for people, when we're talking about resilience, or when I'm talking about resilience, we're talking about a person's ability to handle stress, a person's ability to handle failure, rejection, criticism, sometimes internal criticism. I know that that's a big one. And also to handle life in general, whatever life throws your way. Resilient people tend to be the ones that know that stress happens, and they learned how to expect it and manage it. And also resilient people tend to possess something that I really enjoy, that I really love. It's a 4-letter word, and it's called grit. And grit embodies the qualities of courage, conscientiousness, and endurance, which is huge. And so you were telling us a little bit about your journey, Marisela, and I'm so fascinated to jump in and dive in more with you on that. So tell us, when you were like, I want to go back to like when you were in your darkest hour, when you were standing there and you were looking around, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Where do I go? Why is this happening to me? Like, what was that thing? Like, first of all, to bring us to that moment and talk to us about what you were going through at that moment. But then also, what was that thing that helped you keep moving forward and keep putting at least one foot in front of the other?
So I guess I go back to the time, like right after my ex-husband passed away. I that was probably by far my darkest hour. And I just, I'm a mom and I had to be there for my daughter. I felt like, there was my grief as well, because, I was married to him for 18 years. He was the love of my life, and we were friends after, the divorce and everything. But, I now have a 9-year-old grieving child too. And I realized very, very quickly that I actually, in order to really be there for her the way and show up for her the way she needed me to show up for her, right? I had to show up for myself first. I realized that was where I kind of had the epiphany about self-care, because, I wasn't sleeping at first or anything like that. And I said to myself, I need to take care of myself so that I could be here for her. So I have to make sure I get sleep. I have to take care of myself physically. I have to take care of myself mentally. I started going to therapy so that I could, sort out my feelings, unpack that grief and everything, so that I could be strong for her, and also emotionally. So I had to start, accepting help and asking for help. That was something that's always been kind of difficult for me, because I've always been very independent and very much like, oh, I can do it all, and and all of that. But I found myself in a situation at the time. I mean, my parents were still alive, but they lived in Florida. I live in New Jersey. And though I still have, my ex-husband's family and my sister, but she doesn't live that close to me. I really felt like, oh my gosh, this is, it's me, I'm here by myself. And I had to start asking for help and accepting help from others, and emotional support from others. That was huge, because in order to help her out and be there for her, I had to take care of myself first. Like, it's kind of like that analogy with when you take a flight and the flight attendant says that you have to do your oxygen mask first before you help someone else. Because if you pass out because you didn't put your mask on first, you're not gonna be able to help your child or whoever it is, right? So you have to be able to do that. And that's basically what kept me going.
Yes. Absolutely. And, I love that you said that, because that's so powerful. I always use that analogy about the airplane oxygen, because it really is true. If you are not functioning, if you're breaking down, how can you actually be how can you be there for someone? How could you be, a strong, presence for someone when you can't even stand up on your own 2 feet yourself,
Correct.
And I love that you talked about, allowing yourself to accept and receive support, because oftentimes those of us who are resilient and those of us who have overcome challenges, or are even right now out there overcoming challenges, for those of you who are out there, facing obstacles, oftentimes we tend to take it on ourselves, take the bull by the horns. We know how to figure this out. We got to get through this. We got to do this ourselves. We're alone in this, we kind of take on that persona and we get things done. And it helps us to a certain degree. But then at a certain point, you realize that it takes a village. You can't just do everything on your own. You're going to end up burning yourself out. And so you had that epiphany, especially I think when you looked at your daughter and you saw her reflection and you're like, well, wait a minute, it's not just about me, maybe honestly, to play devil's advocate, maybe if it would have been just you would have just you know, kept going until you like, you know, completely run yourself down and end up in bed sleeping for 2 weeks because you're so exhausted because you just, you know, run yourself down, because that's what we do when it's ourselves. But when we have someone that we have to be responsible for, or that we have to account ourselves for, or like, you know, answer to, then we're like, oh, wait a minute, hold on.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? And so having her there opened you up to like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. I need to bring the village in. You know, it takes a tribe.
Right. Yes.
You know, we're tribal creatures. We're communal creatures. You know, since ancient times we've evolved, but since ancient times, like, you know, in the tribe, everyone had a different role. Everyone had a different thing that they took on. Like, you know, this person was the weaver. This person was the one that got the water. This person was the wise person. Like everyone, this person was the doctor. Everyone had something that they shared with each other. These people took care of the kids while the other ones went hunting, and, you know, all these different things. And so, you know, we still carry that. We're still tribal and communal creatures, except that now with like the nuclear family style structure of the Industrial Revolution, we've turned into like, our families are scattered everywhere. And we're like, some of us are over here, some of us are over there, you know, and it's like so disconnected. So we lose some of that. But even though our family may be disconnected, we might be able to find that connection and that support and that community through friends, through colleagues, through those that are around us, because help is all around us. We just have to allow ourselves to be open to listening to it and to hearing it and to accepting it, you know? And so you said that asking for help was difficult. So what was that like for you to finally, like, what was the internal dialogue when you were like having to ask for help? Like what was going on for you? And then finally, when you did ask for help, what was that like?
Yeah. Yeah, it was difficult at first because I wasn't used to it. But then, you know, I'm a really giving person. I've always been that way. I've only recently really started working on like setting boundaries, I'm going to be honest. And I thought to myself,
girl, my self-love program. That's what we talk about, my self-love program all day.
That is something I definitely need help with. But, you know, and then I realized to myself, you know, I'm always giving. And whenever somebody comes and asks me, I bend over backwards. And a lot of times I would sacrifice like what I was doing so that I could be there. Right. And I said to myself, you know, it's all right for me. I had to like kind of convince myself it's all right for me to now ask, you know, like, and I did, like, I mean, it wasn't like, you know, I asked people that I guess I felt a little bit more comfortable asking with, because I knew that I had been there for them too, you know? So, and then and it was okay. When I did it, I was like, okay, this is okay. And
not
then
the end of the world.
It's not. And then one of the things that you mentioned too is about the tribe, right? So the other thing is that some people are better at certain things than you are. Like everybody has their strengths, and it's just like, you know, so it's okay to go to other people for advice and help and all that. It's actually a great thing. That's like, you know, it gives like the best results, right?
Exactly.
You might not be good at one thing, but somebody else might be. And then so you kind of tap into their wisdom or their experience and their expertise. And yeah. And once I started doing it, I realized, you know, like I really should have been doing this all along. You know, so
yes, so powerful. Yes. And so I wanted to dive into something else, which you mentioned about finding your calling at a very early age of, you know, working with underprivileged or underserved youth. What called you to do that? Like, what was the first, when did you first start doing that? And how did you start out in that? If you could give us some context.
Right. It's funny, I sort of stumbled into it, you know, it was, you know, it was one of those things after I graduated from college, and I didn't really, I don't know, I didn't have a sense of, you know, what I really wanted to do. And it was kind of like an ad in a newspaper that I found, and it talked about, you know, working. It was a small women's college that I started working at, and they talked about working with a particular program that's for disadvantaged students. And I knew about it because one of my college roommates had been part of that program in college, so I knew a little bit about that program. And then there was also like this scholarship program for Latinas that you were going to be recruiting for. And I was like, wow, you know, this sounds really, really interesting, you know? And so, you know, as I went for the interview, I was like really young. I mean, I was like 21, you know, and I went for the interview, and the more I learned about it, the more, you know, it was really, really felt like it was really up my alley. I was going to be going to like high schools, and a lot of that, you know, I grew up in in an urban area, and like my high school was one of the high schools I was going to be going to and talking to these students. And I remember myself being that first generation college student, kind of having to figure things out myself, because my parents hadn't gone to college, and also they grew up, you know, my dad grew up in Puerto Rico, my mother grew up in Cuba, so they didn't even have that frame of reference of the how things were done in the United States, you know. So to kind of figure things out myself, luckily I did have an older sister that she was 2 years older than I was, you know, so she was definitely a role model for me and everything. But still, you know, and I thought to myself, oh, it'd be really great to be able to help students figure this out now that I've gone through it. Because again, I've always been that. I've always wanted to, like, if there's anything that I figured out for myself, I'm very eager to like help other people, because if I could help somebody else have an easier time than having not having to figure it out for themselves, I'm very happy to do that. So I started doing that, and yeah, and I just found it very fulfilling. And I've been, you know, I worked with a lot of different populations throughout the years, but always underserved populations, because that is where I feel that my strength is in, you know, to help with that hand holding, and, you know, for students that really have no clue, and the parents, doing workshops for parents and bilingual workshops, all that kind of stuff, you know. So it's been very, very, like I said, fulfilling for me. And then this other thing with the Chica Power is like, I feel like it's sort of an extension. It's just a different area, but it's like the stuff that I've learned in my personal life, you know, like I want to be able to share that with people. And if I could help somebody, you know, that is stuck, is feeling stuck, because I know that part of my, you know, I felt like I was in a rut, like at one point in my life, you know, and when I was in my marriage, and I felt like it all goes back to that whole like self-care thing. I used to think self-care was kind of selfish. That's how I used to view it, you know, and I really, yes, I totally lost myself in being a wife and a mother, and, you know, in my career as well, I devoted myself. But outside of Marisela, the mother, Marisela, the wife, Marisela, the admissions, you know, professional, there was no, like, I lost my sense of self. Exactly. I lost my sense of self. I didn't like go out hard. Rarely did I go out with friends, and I never did anything for myself. It turned out that I ended up like gaining a ton of weight, because I became like very inactive, and I was very unhappy with myself. And I felt like I was in this rut. I mean, I did eventually go on to like lose 75 pounds, and, you know, keep it all off all these years, and be like, you know, a happy, active person and everything. But it took a long time, you know, and I want to, you know, like tell people how I did it, because maybe how I did it will work for you as well, you know. So yeah, so that's, I've always been attracted to that, to like helping people, like, you know, figure things out if they're feeling lost or stuck. And that's what attracted me to, you know, college admissions.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. That's why I started the self-love program for women to start with, because I also do men's work. But this particular program, I started it for women because it seemed to me, I've been operating, it's going to be 3 years now that I've started Divine Journey. So in June, so I'm going to have my little anniversary. I'm super excited. And through just doing workshops with women and all the work that I was doing with women, I realized that women, and also through my own journey, because the self-love program is really a tribute of like everything that I went through in my own self-love journey that I put into this program. But I saw the same patterns in all the women that I was coming across, which was a lot of what you just talked about, which was loss of identity, loss of sense of self, not knowing who you are because you're giving everything to everyone and doing everything for everyone else, and nothing is left for you. And you're just completely, you have no idea who you are. So I call it like the ping pong effect. You're just like this ping pong, like just going boom, boom, back and forth. And it's a very miserable place to be. And I know it is, because I was there, and I was there for almost 20 years. And I feel the same calling as you, which is like, if I could help one woman kind of not go through what I went through, but not even that, like at least the length of time it went through, because they might experience what I experienced, but not for 20 years, you know. If I can minimize the time that they have to suffer through that, then my work is done, you know. So I think we could relate a lot in the sense that, you know, we're here to help women kind of speed up the transformational process and get to where they want to be. So that's beautiful. It's fascinating. So let me ask you this, because something that also a lot of people that are resilient and that are going through challenges, one of the biggest things that we face is something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, which is failure.
Mhm.
No one likes to talk about failure.
Mhm.
But, I always like to mention it here on these interviews because what is failure really? What is it really? And
Mhm.
so let me ask you, Marisela, what has failure meant to you in your journey? And what can you reflect on to feel that it might have been a failure or what you perceived as a failure at the time and what
Mhm.
opened up for you as a result?
Mhm. That's a great question. So I mean, honestly, I perceived you know, my divorce, the end of my marriage, as a failure,
Yeah,
for many years,
it's a
and
huge one for people. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I was married for 18 years, so like I didn't think I was gonna end up getting divorced and all of that. So yeah, but again, I think it was just I learned a lot of lessons from that, right? So I learned that you can't just lose yourself, that going back to really you have to show up for yourself first. I mean, not showing up for yourself is a form of self-betrayal, and
Yes.
so it's like, how can you really, you know really be there for other people if you look at it in that context, and if you don't show up for yourself first. So to me, I feel like failures are like learning moments. Those are life's lessons. So my mother, right, who was Cuban, she loved her refranes, and these are actually I actually incorporate refranes into my videos, my Chica Power videos,
Nice.
because I think there's I mean, she used them all the time, so they're like ingrained in my head, right? But they're really relevant. And one of her favorites was "No hay mal que por bien no venga," which translates into something good comes out of everything bad that happens to you in your life, right? And
exactly, it's there's nothing bad that comes that there isn't something good that comes out of it, basically.
Correct. Yes,
and
exactly.
refrán, just for the audience members, that refrán is a phrase. It's a Spanish phrase for something. It's like a way of saying something with different words, and it's kind of it's almost kind of like I don't want to say a puzzle, but like a play on words sometimes is
yes, because some of them rhyme,
right,
and it's they're sort of like an adage. So like they're
right, there you
usually
go.
they have a lesson, right? They all have like a little lesson. And so yeah, so I totally believe that, because I totally believe that out of everything bad, so out of failures, right, like that you perceive to be like a negative thing, right? You perceive it to be negative, but later on, if you're open to seeing the lesson in those failures, later on in life, you may make a better choice, or you may just take a different path in your life that you wouldn't have because of that failure. And so I think that failures are life's lessons, and they're really, really important. They
Absolutely.
also, yeah, and they also take you outside. I think also failures take you outside of your comfort zone, and that's where growth is, right? That's you can't, if you're always stuck in your comfort zone, you're not gonna grow, you're not gonna learn. So I think that they're essential. Unfortunately, like people perceive them to be, they seem to be negative at the time, but later on I think that you learn from them. So yeah.
Exactly. And so, I love what you were talking about with your divorce, where, the divorce was the perceived failure, but then from the divorce, you realized that you had completely lost yourself in the process of the marriage. Did you feel like that was a failure? And if so, which one was the biggest failure, losing yourself or getting divorced in your mind?
Yeah, I would say probably losing myself, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I went on to do it again after that, even though I kind of like recognized it, but not in the deep sense that I did after doing it a few more times,
Right.
Yeah, so I did go on to do it again, in other relationships, or just in life in general,
Yeah.
where I kind of didn't, you know, didn't realize that I really needed to show up for myself first. And so I would say that was the biggest failure of not being there for myself. Yeah.
Yes. And so that was the first time you actually became aware to it. But
Yes.
since this is very common, Marisela, especially with my people that I work with, the women that have done my program, you become aware of it. But since it's the only thing you know, it's the only way you know how to be, you end up just recreating, doing the pattern again and doing the pattern again until it finally gets so loud that you're like, wait a minute. And whether it's loud in front of you or loud within you, whichever loud that is, but it gets so loud that you can no longer handle it anymore. You need to change, you need to transform it. And so I always like to replace failure with a different F word, or a word that starts with an F, which is feedback. And so those perceived failures in your mind, oh, I'm getting a divorce, I lost myself, all this stuff was actually giving you feedback for your own journey to continue to transform and to get to where you are today.
Correct. I agree with that. That's absolutely on point.
Yeah, so powerful, so powerful. So let me ask you this with the last couple minutes that we have. So was there a time during your journey, you've been through so much, you've accomplished so much in your life, you've had loss, you've had gains. Was there a point where you actually realized, or it occurred to you, that you were resilient, or that you had been resilient? And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I never felt like I'm gonna give up on stuff, So I felt that I've maintained positivity, okay, with all the things that have happened. I've seen some people maybe not be so positive and maybe get a little bit bitter in life. I've actually worked hard at this also, in just keeping my heart like pure and soft and open, because I think that a lot of times when someone experiences a lot of pain in their life, they tend to build walls around themselves, and because they don't want to be hurt again, so they build these walls. But what they don't realize is the walls, if you're trying to not keep stuff from going in, you're also, the walls are keeping stuff from going out. So like in order, you have to be vulnerable to experience love. And to me, love is very important, to be able to love and to feel joy and all of that, right? So you have to also keep yourself keep your heart like open and vulnerable. And anytime that you keep that bitterness, I've done like that shadow work to get all that bitterness out. Like literally, I've done this motion of like scooping it out of my heart, and so so I think that and sometimes it's work, because I actually like, I think I've always been pretty good at bouncing back, that whole resiliency thing. But like sometimes when things happen like it really close to one another, you start getting a little bit like,
wear down,
right, a little longer to bounce back and all that. So you might have to work at it a little bit, a little bit harder, and be a little bit more conscious about doing that. So, but then I did realize that, and I said to myself, I'll be darned if I'm going to let all this stuff like keep me down. I'm going to stay with the titanium song, shoot me down. I keep getting up. I'm going to keep getting up. I'm never going to.
That was your mantra.
Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Whatever it takes. Let me tell you, if it's a song, if it's a joke, if it's a movie, if it's whatever makes you keep going. Yeah. It's so powerful.
Yes. And humor. I think humor has helped me a lot. I've always been like someone with kind of a silly sense of humor, and I really kind of worked to keep that. And I really think that helps to be able to laugh, even in the really hard moments. If you're able to laugh and just give it a little bit of a break, there's, that's really, really helpful.
So important. Absolutely. 10,000%. So important. Oh my God, I absolutely adore you. I could talk to you for hours.
Same here. I feel the same way about you, Mio. I love what you do. I'm so enamored by what you do, and I'm so in awe of what you do. So I think I'm really, really, I feel honored to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. I could talk to you for days. I'm in love with you. But for the listeners out there, I always like to leave them with this final question for you, for my hot seat person today. Yes. I always like to leave them with a final question, which is, what words of wisdom would you like to leave our viewers with, who may be on a similar journey of resilience as you are, or as you have been on? What words of wisdom would you like to leave them with?
So my words of wisdom and what I've learned throughout all of this is that true happiness comes from within, and that you never should put your happiness in someone else's hands. I feel that, you just have to make yourself happy first. Think about like what you would want somebody to, how you want people to feel about you, how you want people to treat you, and feel that way about yourself and treat yourself that way. And because that's like the only sure way. I always tell people, the only person that you're 100% sure that you're going to spend the rest of your life with is you. Right? Yes. So you should be somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Like, think about that, so I that's what I tell people. Don't put your happiness in other people's hands. It's up to you to make yourself happy, and do it. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel guilty about it, because I've had issues with guilt my whole life.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yes, and it's okay. It's okay to do that and make yourself, feel good and treat yourself well.
And it's funny, I'll even add to that because I always use this with clients, and it's so true. The only person that you'll ever have a relationship 100% is with you. But also, even if you were to, let's say you knew exactly what you wanted, right? You knew exactly how you wanted to be loved. You knew exactly what you wanted to make yourself feel good, everything. And you explained that to another person, right? You told them, if you gave them a book and you said, here's everything I want, here's exactly, here you go. They would read it. They would perceive it how they perceive it. And then they would give it to you in the way that they best know how. So even if you explain what it is you want to someone, they will still do it in a different way. So the only person that knows how to love yourself the way that you want to be loved is you.
Yes.
You're the only one that could give yourself the real love that you know that you deserve, the real love that you want. You are the only one that could give that to yourself. So that is the best advice that you could give to our viewers. Thank you so much. Your wisdom, your story. Thank you for being so vulnerable and open to talk about your story and to take us on a journey with you. It's so empowering to see what you've been through and where you are now and what you're creating for your life and for women, and the role model that you are for your daughter. It's so inspiring. So I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Like I said, I'm really honored to be here. Very much so.
Thank you so much. And so guys, just so you know, we're going to still be here for the month of May, so don't miss out. These interviews are amazing. As you can see with Marisela today, we had an amazing conversation. So keep coming back Wednesdays and Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in more information about my self-love journey, which is called Resilience, a breakthrough journey to self-love, visit me at miosantana.com/self-love for more info. I would be happy to welcome you into the program. It's an amazing 8-week program for women. And Marisela, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
And everyone, remember to be kind to yourselves, love one another, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.